And I'm going to keep saying dick a lot, so just roll with it. Welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses nerddom through various segments. My name is Tyler Hunt, and I am here with my co-host, as always, Pat Kuhn. How's it going, man?
I'm good. I am very, very tired. I literally rolled out of bed about 15 minutes before we were going to start recording and threw on my robe for those that are curious what I'm wearing right now, which is exactly zero of you. I am still wearing my robe right now. So Tyler's getting quite the show this morning on Skype. But yeah, my buddy got Call of Duty World War II, and we basically just played prop hunt until 2 a.m. last night. So I'm very sleepy. I have not stayed up until 2 o'clock in the morning in a while because I'm a little bitch now. So yeah.
Dude, like back in the day, we would stay up all night playing video games and then like go to work in the morning. Like not together. And I'm just assuming that you did that as well.
Yeah, we did not carpool.
No, but now it just shows how old we are. Like you can't go to bed at 2 a.m. and then wake up to record a podcast at 10 a.m. Like there's a solid 8 hours in there. Like you have no right to be tired.
Yeah, we didn't stop playing it till 2. I didn't go to bed until 2. So, yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I love playing prop hunt. Prop hunt is very, very fun. If you guys haven't played it yet, I did a stream of it on Friday night, and it was a lot of fun. I am terrible as the props, and we had a lot of fun with that because I would die almost immediately. It's really, really fun because at the very end, they will show you like how much time you survived as a prop, and everybody will be in like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and I'll be like 1:30. Like I die immediately. I am tired. I'm really, really bad at hide and seek apparently. So a little children's game I am just garbage at.
What is prop hunt for those of us that don't play this game?
So basically you get dropped in on a map, and there's obviously 2 teams, and there's 4 rounds to each match. And the first round, you either are the hunters or the huntees. So basically, you're either humans or you're the props. If you're the props, basically, you get randomly selected, and depending on the map you're on, and basically, you could be a barrel or a bench or something that's in that map. And you basically just find places to hide in the map. And the people that are hunting you, the other team, just tries to come along and shoot you. And if they find you, you can move, you can do flash grenades, you can set decoys, you can actually change. You have 2 changes per round. So it's actually really, really fun. I really enjoy it. I'm better at hunting. I'm actually really good at hunting for some strange reason. But yeah, I'm terrible at hiding. But it's so much fun. We had a blast.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Just not interesting enough to buy the game. So,
yeah, I don't know how much I have to talk about how much fun I have playing this game before you will get it. Like, I'm just curious. I think I'll just bring it up every episode.
I used to love the Call of Duty games. It's just, I don't know. It seems like I'm more selective with what I buy, especially at like a $60 price tag. Because, I mean, obviously we've talked about it before on the show. Like, I've been playing Fortnite, which is free, or there's the version you can buy for like, what, 20 or 30 bucks? So, I mean, that game's a lot of fun at half the price. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I actually just started playing Fortnite the other day, and it is very addicting. Like, I immediately was like, man, this is a game that I'm going to play a lot, because it was a lot of fun. I actually got, like, top 20 a couple of times, which was very strange to me, because literally the first game that I played, I ranked to, like, 24 in solo. And I was like, this game is easy. And then the next game, I died like at 87, like immediately. I dropped in and there was a person already there and I did not have a gun and I just ran at them with my little pickaxe and it did not go well.
Yeah, the pickaxe does like no damage.
Yeah.
I think the best I've done is I got second once, and that is very rare. Like, the people that usually win are just crazy good at that game, and it's annoying, but it's really addicting, and it's a lot of fun. Whenever I talked about it for what I was into a few episodes back, I mentioned how I didn't think that I'd really get into the PvE portion of it, but my buddies that I play this game with kind of dragged me into the PvE portion, and it's not really my cup of tea, but I have played it a lot more than whenever I talked about Fortnite last, and it's fun. So, like, if you haven't got Fortnite, especially like the free version, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But even the paid version is fun, just not necessarily my favorite part of the game.
Yeah, like I said, I've gotten really into it the last couple of days. I have the free version. I probably won't buy the full version of the game just because I play so much and there's a ton of stuff that's coming out that I want. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I play like a little bitch. I mean, that's the only way that I can get top 20. Like, I'll get a couple of kills a match. Like, I think I got like 3 kills one match, and I think that was actually the match that one of the matches that I got top 20. But it's basically, I just try to drop on the edge of the match or the map and try to slowly make my way in as the circle gets smaller and smaller. Yeah. And so I very rarely see a ton of people. So I kind of play like a little bitch. And then, like, when I got 16th, which is the best I've gotten in the few games that I've played, literally the first person I saw killed me. So it's not even like I played it all that well. It's just that I just never found anybody. And then the first person I found killed me. And then I was like, oh, I got 16th.
So I have a question for you then. So as far as Nerd Year resolutions go, we both set like a number of games we wanted to beat as a New Year's Nerd Year resolution. And yours was a lot higher than mine. But at what point do you throw a game like Fortnite onto that list as being completed if there's no campaign you're playing? Or do you even count it?
I haven't looked at the achievements. I'm assuming there's achievements for it. So some games like Madden, I guess you could play franchise, but I mean, it's the same type of thing. I play a lot of Madden where it's just like, at what point are you done with the game? And I think you look to achievements in that situation or just time played. I mean, if you play a game for 50 hours or 100 hours, at a certain point, I would count that. Like, I don't know if I'll ever get that point with Fortnite. I forgot the name for a second there, but I'm kind of running into that same problem with the Long Dark. Now, the Long Dark actually does have a story mode, but it's in different episodes, and episode 3 and 4 haven't even unlocked yet, and I'm closing in on episode 2. So it's like, do I count it once episode 2 is done? Because I've put a lot of time into the survival mode as well, and that's most people what they play the most. So it's like I'm kind of getting there with that game as well. But I think it's just you have to look to the achievements, but then you also have to look to time played as well. If you want to play 100 hours and you hit that mark, then I think at that point you can say that you're done with it.
Cool. I was just curious what your discretion is there, because Fortnite's a game I'm going to want to probably add to my list, but I'll have to look at hours played and stuff like that before I can make that call.
For sure. So I'm just curious before we jump into the episode. We're going a little long with this intro, but have you beaten anything? Like, are you on track?
Yeah. Oh, I haven't beaten anything yet. There's a couple, like, this is kind of a cop out, but for Christmas I got the Arkham collection, which is the remastered Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, and I started playing Arkham Asylum again. So even though I beat it once in college, like, I'll play that through that again. That's been fun, and I've put quite a few hours into Fortnite, so I'd have to see how much. But as far as starting like a new games campaign, no, I have not. But there's not been really much that's come out this year so far.
I think Arkham Asylum, like the remastered, like you're playing it again.
Yeah.
So I don't see how that wouldn't count just because you've beaten it before. You love those games, so you're going to play it again. Because I've been really considering getting the BioShock Remastered Collection because I love those games. And when I replay those, I would count those for sure.
Yeah, so I'll probably count that. And I don't know. I might go back and play Arkham City too, but I don't know. There is a lot of games coming out this year that are on my radar that I'm excited for. So I think that I'll be able to make or exceed my goal. I just need to make sure I'm carving out time to actually sit down and play games.
Cool, man. So my what I'm into is actually a game. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go. So I'm actually
absolutely.
like the reason I asked the question is that I'm actually looking pretty good for my 20 so far this year. I've already beaten 2 and I'm closing in on the third, and the third is the game that I'm going to talk about. So I mentioned last episode that I started playing Doom, which is a game that came out, I believe, in 2016, and I never really played it back then. I said it like it was forever ago. It was just 2 years ago, but I never played Doom, like any of the games growing up. It's actually kind of funny. I remember when I was little and the first game had been out, obviously, for a while. I think I was like 8 or 9. And I went to Toys R Us with my parents, and I was really, really excited because anytime my parents took me to Toys R Us, it meant that I was going to get something. Like, they're not bad people. Like, they're not going to take a kid to Toys R Us and not get them a toy. But for me, it was always, I would stand in the video game aisle and try to pick out a video game. And I remember seeing Doom and was like, man, I really want this game. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and he looked at the cover, and then he looked at the rating, and it was like 17 plus or whatever it was. And he's like, well, you're not 17 yet. And I was like, man, I have to wait a really long time for this game. And it never occurred to me until I was older that my dad just didn't want to buy me that game. Like, he didn't want to buy me another video game. So he just that was his excuse. So I never got to play Doom because I wasn't 17. And it took me a really embarrassing a long time to realize that had nothing to do with it. He just didn't want to buy me that game. So I mentioned last episode that it kind of made me a little sick playing it at first. And I think that was just, like I said last episode, it kind of got in my head because my buddy got sick when he was playing it. And they kind of give you this warning at the beginning of the game that it might cause like seizures and stuff like that. And I played it for a few more hours a couple of days ago. And yeah, I mean, I was fine. So I think it was just kind of in my head. But I will say that as video games go, like, it's beautifully made. Like, it's absolutely, like, as first person shooters go, it's really just awesome to look at. Like, I mean, it's super gory and it's really, really intense. You're on Mars and you're fighting like demonic figures, like basically just hounds from hell. Like, it's really gory and graphic and really intense, but it looks great. Like, everything's built really well. The sound is amazing. Like, a lot of times you hear the demons before you even see them, and that's really cool. And you know when you're getting into this big room with a bunch of demons because the rock music is in the background, and you get pumped when you're playing this game. And so I really enjoy it, but I just don't know if it has that replay value that I look for in some games. Like, I think like halfway through this game and I'm already kind of bored with it. Like, everything else is built really well. The story's pretty lackluster and that might play a part in it, but most of it is because it is a first person shooter to the core. Like, there's nothing else to it. You run into a room, you shoot them, and then you leave that room and you go to the next room and you just rinse and repeat. And there's not a whole lot else to it. And maybe I just haven't gotten to something else yet. And that is true. Like, I am talking about this game before I've beaten it, but maybe I haven't just gotten to anything else, but it's just rinse and repeat. And it's kind of boring. There are these glory kills that are pretty cool. Like, you can shoot the demon and then it'll like flash. And if you hit this button real quick, it'll do this really cool cutscene. But when there's so many demons in this game and you see so many glory kills, it almost gets to the point where those are boring as well. Like, they change depending on what angle you're at and whatever. But so they do switch up a little bit. But for the most part, it's just like oh, I hit the trigger to shoot, and then I hit the trigger to do the glory kill, and then I just rinse and repeat the whole time. And it's just really kind of boring after a while.
Have you gotten to the part with The Rock yet?
Okay. Yeah. It took me like a split second to realize what you were talking about. And yeah, no, I have not gotten to that part yet. But unfortunately, I have seen that movie. And I defended that movie for a little bit, and then I rewatched it like 5 or 6 years ago because I saw that movie in the theater, and I thought it was pretty fun at the time. I liked the first person scene where they go into first person, and then I watched it like 5 or 6 years ago, and I was like, this is trash.
Yeah, I have not seen that movie since I saw it in theaters, but I do remember not disliking it. But again, how long ago did that come out? Like probably early 2000s. So
I think it was 2005 or 2006. It would have been 2006. I know I was a freshman in college when it came out. So it was either 05 or 06 because I came home to visit one of my buddies that I went to high school with, and we went and saw it. He's a big gamer as well, so he was excited to see it.
Yeah, that's the extent of my knowledge on Doom is that movie. And the only thing I remember about it is The Rock is the bad guy at the end because he gets infected or whatever. So,
spoiler alert.
If you haven't seen Doom yet, just don't see it.
Yeah,
and
pretty much.
You'll be spoiled. So
yeah,
cool.
And then let's be honest: if you haven't seen it yet, you're not literally clamoring for it.
That is probably true.
All right. So, what are you into this week?
I wish that I could segue really nicely and talk about a video game or something and keep this conversation rolling, but instead I'm going to have to shift gears a little bit and focus on a movie that I went and saw last night with my wife, and that movie is Hostels. So I'm going to try not to come across too negative here because it really wasn't a bad movie, but it's definitely not something I plan to watch again. If you're unfamiliar, Hostels is about an army captain named Joe that is assigned to escort a Native American chief and his family from New Mexico to Montana, where the tribal lands for their people are. The chief is dying from cancer, and he's to be returned home so he can be buried there pretty much. And this order is coming from the president himself, and Joe is going to be court-martialed if he doesn't do it. So he's kind of forced to take this mission on. The issue that's kind of preventing Joe from readily accepting this mission and from basically being a willing participant is that he's spent the majority of his career hunting down and imprisoning Native Americans for the U.S. government, which again explains why he's kind of reluctant to do it. On this trip from New Mexico to Montana, various things happen to the group as the territory they're going through is pretty dangerous. And one important plot point in the movie is that they come across Rosamund Pike's character. The movie actually starts out with a scene of her and her family, and while I won't spoil what happens, the events that leave her in the path of the traveling group led by Joe, who's played by Christian Bale, are much more disturbing and shocking than what I expected from this movie. With all that being said, the tension and drama in this movie never really quite lived up to that initial scene. And I think that that's why I find myself, whenever I was watching it, only thinking that it was okay. It was a movie where I ended up checking my phone a couple times to see if it was almost over. And that's never a good sign. So in addition to not having much drama or tension that carried any weight throughout the rest of the film, I never really cared too incredibly much about the characters in this movie. I mentioned that Christian Bale's character hunted and imprisoned Native Americans for most of his army career and figured there'd be some type of redemption where he learns to love the people that he's escorting to Montana. And while the group does eventually learn to work together throughout the trip, the idea is never really explored. And Joe at one point is just kind of like, okay, I'm fine with working with them instead of against them, which to me came across as poor character development. Like you never really get inside his head. Little things like this are littered throughout the entire movie, which means a lot of things about it were left kind of at the surface level, and little was done to help me care about the journey. We were watching for over 2 hours in this movie. So with all that being said, again, I want to reiterate that this isn't a bad movie. And as I've kind of thought about it after getting out of the theater last night, I've grown to appreciate the story a little bit more. I just wish that there was more done to flesh out the characters because you had some pretty great actors in it. Overall, like I said, with the great actors, the performances were pretty good. Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike both do a decent job, but in the end of the day, unfortunately, this is just going to be an Oscar bait movie that didn't end up getting nominated for any Oscars, and it's going to be left in the dust because honestly, I think that it's a movie that gets forgotten in a few years. So, was pretty bummed with this because I was looking forward to it, but, it's not bad. I'd probably say like 3 out of 5.
Yeah, that's disappointing because I also thought that this looked pretty interesting. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a huge Westerns fan, but I do enjoy them here and there, especially the more recent Westerns. Like, I'm not like going back and watching all these hardcore, like older Westerns or anything like that, but I did enjoy True Grit. I guess No Country for Old Men is kind of a Western at its core. So I do enjoy those types of movies, but yeah, when I first saw the trailer for this, I kind of figured it was one of those kind of redemption stories. Like, you're going to be teamed up, like an odd couple situation, and then you're going to learn to, like, at least respect each other by the end. And it doesn't sound like you got that, from these characters. Also, I also thought that, like, you would find out why Christian Bale hated the Native Americans. Like, do you get that? Like, is there a reason why he does it, or is it just that he's following orders?
He kind of has a reason that's explored a little bit whenever he's given the task at the beginning of the movie, but it's not really flushed out. It's just kind of a one-off line.
Yeah, so a lot of these types of movies, it's like, oh, there's a reason that he hates this group, like a legitimate reason that you can kind of empathize. Not necessarily empathize, but you can kind of understand a little bit. And then as the movie progresses, he kind of loosens his grip on his hatred or whatever towards this group of people. That's usually how these types of movies go. But it doesn't sound like it really does that, which, in a way can be applauded because it's not predictable. But at the same time, if there's not good character development in place of that, then it could be kind of a boring movie too.
Did you ever see Out of the Furnace?
I did not, but I believe this movie's the same guy, right?
Yeah, and that's why I bring it up. It's the same guy who did Out of the Furnace, and I remember going into Out of the Furnace really excited because it kind of seemed like a vigilante redemption type movie as well, and that movie had pretty poor character development in it too. So I think that there's kind of a parallel with this guy's storytelling.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie. I know he's done a couple of movies, and I don't remember off the top of my head which one I've seen, but I know I've seen at least one of them. But yeah, that's disappointing because it looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I would say like still go see it, but just have your expectations tempered a little bit. Like, it's getting pretty decent reviews. But I don't know. It didn't live up to what I was expecting. So
cool, man.
All right, you ready to get into comics?
Yeah, what'd you read this week?
So I finished up Nightwing: The New Order. So issue 6 of this miniseries came out on Wednesday. So I was a bit behind and read issues 3 through 6 to kind of get caught up on it. And I brought up this comic when it began and thought it would be fitting to talk about it one more time now that the miniseries has been concluded. This miniseries was somewhat of an Elseworlds tale or a what if scenario, and at its core, it's just a miniseries about Dick Grayson wanting to save the world after Batman dies, and we find out in issue 5 of the series like what exactly led to that. So if you recall, whenever I talked about issue 1 a few months back, Dick outlaws metahuman abilities and is part of the movement to outlaw metahumans and ended up creating a world that was seemingly safe for quote-unquote normal people while quote-unquote helping those with powers by suppressing their gifts. And with people that had gifts that weren't able to be suppressed, they were frozen. So it's pretty out there. It's pretty unlike the Dick Grayson that we know from the comics, but that's what's cool about these what if books is they're able to explore on certain things, and we're able to see why Dick got so extreme. And I'm going to keep saying Dick a lot, so just roll with it. But how
I'm used to you talking about Dick a lot.
But we got to see, like, you know, what happened to Batman and why that pushed Dick to be like this. And you know, the measures are crazy, but at the end of the day, in the storyline, it's something that the public votes on, and it's supported. Of course, as I mentioned when I talked about issue 1, a wrench is thrown into this thing and Dick's beliefs when his son Jake is revealed to have powers that he inherited from his mother Starfire. And basically the rest of the miniseries from that point on follows this adventure, and we get to see what happens to a lot of the cool characters in this otherworld scenario, most specifically the Teen Titans, and what results is a really cool what-if story. So with that being said, I do think that there are some plot holes through this miniseries that are never really explained, such as why some characters are allowed to keep their powers and why they have any powers at all at this point. But at its core, it's a cool dissection of bits of the Batman family and what happens when that character, Bruce Wayne, isn't around anymore. What initially drew me to this book was writer Kyle Higgins, who was the writer of Nightwing throughout most of the New 52 run. And it was cool to see him have the permission to do a self-contained story that is fun and entertaining. And he obviously has a lot of love for the character of Nightwing. And I always love seeing Grayson's morals and ideas flushed out a little further, as he's kind of just basically the shadow of Batman and the first Robin. And I like to see his psyche dug into a little bit, which this book does a really good job of doing. And I think at the end of the day, this miniseries will by no means go down in history, and it'll probably be forgotten after a few years, but it's a fun 6-issue read that I enjoyed, and I'm glad that they're still putting cool Elseworld tales like this out that don't really fit into the continuity of the other books.
Yeah, I always enjoy like what if stories, like when an author can just write cool shit and not have to worry about, oh, is this going to fit with canon, or is this going to fit within whatever is happening with the main book, or whatever. I just think that those can be interesting, and they can get batshit crazy at times, but I think that when a writer is writing just to tell a cool story, like, I mean, I get that all comic book writers want to tell cool stories, but when you have to worry about canon, that makes it a little bit more difficult to do. So I think it's always fun to read these like what if stories, like, especially if you are into the character itself. Like, that's one of the reasons why I really love the Renew Your Vows book for Spider-Man, because I love Spider-Man, and I love just kind of reading these what if stories, and these I think Renew Your Vows is a little bit more than that, but it's just fun having a writer write something he knows isn't going to affect the canon of the universe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it definitely, it allows the writer to basically show how much they love a character, and that's definitely evident in this book. But what'd you read, man?
I read another number one. I've gotten into the bad habit of bringing up a lot of number ones on the podcast, and I promise you guys I'm trying to get caught up on some of the other books so I can kind of update you on some of the other stuff that I read. But I read a number one, a Marvel number one. Imagine that. Legion number one came out this past week. And for those that don't know, Legion is an X-Men. He's actually one of the more powerful X-Men in the universe. His real name is David Haller. He is the son of Professor X. There's actually a TV show called Legion that is loosely on this character. Like, obviously he's not I don't know. I only saw the first few episodes because it was kind of boring. Like, it didn't capture my attention, but I don't believe they ever explore him being the son of Professor X. Did you watch the whole first season, Tyler?
No, I watched like the first 7 or 8 episodes, and then I kind of gave up on it too. And I think that if I remember correctly, it's hinted at that he's the son, but I don't know that Professor X is ever named outright.
Yeah, and I mean, he won't ever be. I mean, Patrick Stewart's not coming and being on this TV show.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would be really, really shocked if that happened. But like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the TV show. It just never really captured my attention. I probably shouldn't have said boring because I don't necessarily think it's that boring. It just didn't capture my attention. But he's basically this super, super powerful mutant, but he's also insane. Like, he literally is a schizo. And I always think those are kind of interesting stories. Like, you have this person that has all these abilities, but they also have these personal problems and they have this baggage. And he is kind of the extreme situation because he's literally insane. And so he can't tell what his power is and then what his illness is. Like, those lines get really blurred. And I think those are very interesting stories to tell. And so when I started reading this, I was like, okay, I'm going to really like this because it's going to be a super interesting story. And I think I was ultimately disappointed. And maybe it's a case of my expectations being a little high. But for a character like this, that you could tell these really interesting stories with, it's such a layered character. They played it super, super safe with this book. Like, nothing happened in this book that I was just like, that got me any excitement at all. Like, it was basically just your lukewarm superhero book, and I was very, very disappointed. Now, it's a number one, so you get that occasionally with number ones, but we've talked about this so much on the podcast that there has to be something to draw me in. Legion is not a character that I am brand loyal to. I was just wanted to be introduced and wanted to be entertained with this cool superhero story, and I wasn't entertained at all. So I will not be sticking with this book.
Yeah, I saw that this book came out, and we've mentioned it a couple times on the podcast before. Like, whenever I see something like this, it's kind of a turnoff to me because obviously they're just trying to capitalize on the show. Like, the only reason that we have a Legion comic book right now is because there's a Legion show on the air. So that is kind of a turnoff to me, and is kind of why I steered away, and it sounds like I'm glad I did. So,
yeah, it's not necessarily, and I'm going to steal something that you said about Hostiles a few times. It's not necessarily a bad comic book, but I just think that I expected a little too much, like, considering how interesting a character. Now, I'm not super familiar with his backstory, but like I said, he sounds super interesting. I just think that I expected a little bit too much out of the book. It's not necessarily bad at all. It's just really safe storytelling.
yeah, that's disappointing.
For sure. So our next segment is just nerd news. Tyler compiles all the big nerd news headlines and we just discuss them. So what is nerd news this week?
Unfortunately, I don't really have anything that carries much weight. It was kind of a slow week in news. Honestly, the last few weeks have been, but there were a couple things that I did want to bring up. And the first was, it's not really nerd news. It's just more something that caught my eye that happened. And that's last Sunday. They had the SAG Awards that were televised. It was hosted by Kristen Bell. And in that show, Morgan Freeman got the Lifetime Achievement Award. And obviously with the Golden Globes and that award show, and what I'm assuming that the Oscars will be, was there was a big, there's a big movement going on right now around females in the entertainment industry, and not only being treated fairly and like humans, but given a fair shot at, acting and directing and being held equal to their male counterparts. And Morgan Freeman kind of delivered this pipe bomb at the end of his acceptance speech for his Lifetime Achievement Award, where he said, "Look at this statue. It kind of looks like," I forget what his exact quote was, but he's basically like, "Look, man, it's a fucking dude, and you're giving this to girls too." It's very gender specific. So I thought that it was pretty cool that Morgan Freeman just kind of dropped the mic on his way out.
Yeah, he's always. I'm a huge Morgan Freeman fan. I think he's very talented. I think that he, at times, should be a little bit more selective in what he does.
Sure.
Because I think he's done a lot of just shit. that I would be watching it and be like, man, you're too good for this. But he seems like the kind of guy. I don't know if it was a Nerdist that he was on, or maybe it was another podcast I was listening to, and he was just talking. I was like, man, he's so fucking cool. So it seems like he's one of the guys that would do something like that. So I wasn't shocked when I heard about this.
Yeah, it was pretty cool that he did it. The next story I had is, so spoiler alert, our main topic today is we're going to be talking through the Oscar nominations and making a few predictions, but there was another award ceremony that had its nominees released this week, and that's the Razzies. And it seems like this is the first year that people are kind of like fed up with this quote unquote award ceremony. I think that people are kind of getting over it and think that it's pretty shitty and not necessary anymore. And I tend to agree with that. I think that there are a lot of avenues now where people can talk about movies they don't like, specifically like podcasts, like what we do, or whether you do it on YouTube or Twitter or whatever. And an award show like this isn't really necessary anymore, in my opinion. And I think that people are kind of starting to get fed up with that as well. So, I don't want to like go through all the nominees or anything, but I will just, since I brought it up, like here are the nominees for Worst Picture at the Razzies this year. It's Baywatch, The Emoji Movie, 50 Shades Darker, The Mummy, and Transformers: The Last Night. And don't get me wrong, all those movies suck ass, at least the ones I've seen out of that list, but, you know, I don't think that we need to add insult to injury anymore. Like, there's enough people that we have Rotten Tomatoes that shows that those movies are bad. We don't really need to make it an award ceremony anymore at this point.
Yeah, it was always kind of a little fun little thing that they did, but like you said, it doesn't seem like it's necessary anymore because of Rotten Tomatoes and because podcasting has become such a big thing, and YouTube movie reviews and stuff like that. You can find out what what movies get released throughout the year that are really bad, like that everybody hates. So there's no reason to recap it. It just seems really shitty. Like it seems like a shitty thing to do. Like you're just piling on to these movies. I mean, Transformers probably made a shit ton of money, so they don't really give a shit. They haven't given a shit about making a good movie for a long time, so who cares about that? And the 50 Shades of Grey movies are pretty much the exact same thing, so who cares? I mean, I'm sure the Emoji Movie was trying to make a good movie, I guess. I don't know. I've never seen it. Baywatch, I thought, was obviously not great. It was basically a 21 Jump Street ripoff, so that was disappointing, but yeah, I don't think it's necessary anymore.
Yeah, I agree. So, next up, they are making a movie based on the book Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining that Stephen King wrote in 2013. And it's going to be directed by Mike Flanagan, who is the guy who did Gerald's Game for Netflix, which we talked about back in September, October when that came out. So, I'm not familiar with the story very much. I know it follows, what's the kid's name in that movie?
Wasn't it Mikey or something like that?
Yeah, it follows him as an adult, and he's kind of having the same alcoholic tendencies that his father did, and kind of goes from there. So, is it something that we really need? Probably not. But with, it showing that people can still cash in on Stephen King stories, it's not very surprising that it's going to be made.
His name is Danny, not Mikey.
Yeah,
I have not read Dr. Sleep. I've wanted to for a long time, but I mean, there's so many other Stephen King books that I want to read. So it's like, I'm actually currently, I shouldn't say reading. Reading is a stretch. I'm listening to an audiobook. I should be pretty clear about that. I'm actually listening to The Stand right now, not as we speak, because I'm doing the podcast. That would be super weird. But
I wouldn't put it past you. Like, you just press play every time I start talking.
Yeah. I mean, I have played video games while you were talking. No, I haven't. That's a joke. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm interested in. But it seems like Stephen King comes out with a book and then immediately, we're making it into a movie. And then we don't actually see most of these movies. So it would not surprise me at all. Now, The Shining, because it's so popular as a book and so popular as the movie, this probably has a better chance of getting made than the other ones. But pretty much every Stephen King book that's ever been made has had a movie or TV adaptation in the works at some point.
Here's the thing with these adaptations, though. Like, so obviously all of these Stephen King properties are getting bought up and put into development because it was so successful. And I think that it's very classic of the entertainment industry to do something like that and not realize that the reason that it was so successful was because it was very, very well done. So it's okay to make these movies, and I think that a lot of Stephen King books would make great films, but you have to do it right. You can't just assume that because it's one of his stories it's going to make a lot of money. It has to be good. Like, people kept going back to see it, like, because it was released in early September, and then of course you want to watch horror movies in October as you're leading up to Halloween, and that's why it did so well, is because there was a rewatch factor, and it was a very good film. And I just hope that they don't just start putting out a bunch of shit Stephen King movies like The Dark Tower at this point.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's funny that you bring up it, because my wife and I went to Target the other day, and she was telling me, I don't remember how we got to this conversation, but she was telling me one of her friends also works at Target, and she was telling me how, like, people were, like, lined up at midnight or something like that. I don't know if all Targets do this or not, but and they were, like, sold out of it, and I was like, really? Like, I'm so far removed from going to a store at midnight to go see to buy something that, because I just pre-order everything. Either if I want to get the Steelbook, I pre-order from Best Buy. If I just want to get the Blu-ray or the video game or whatever, I do Amazon. So it's just like, it's so weird to me to hear that. I mean, I get it. It was an amazing movie and people loved it and made a shit ton of money, but I just don't understand why people still go to the store and buy something. Like, when you have Amazon and you have Best Buy.
Yeah, I actually got Target's exclusive Blu-ray for it, but I just pre-ordered it online and it was at my door on that Tuesday. So it wasn't really something where I would ever consider going to line up or something for it.
Oh, I remember how the conversation came to be. We were listening to a Coheed album, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this was the last thing that I ever went to Walmart at midnight to pick up. So I think that's how the conversation came to be. But I will say, going back to Stephen King, yes, all of his things are pretty much in production in one form or another, but he seems like another, like, kind of what we were talking about with Morgan Freeman, just like a really cool guy. And at one point, he basically put on his website, here are the stories that I've written that aren't currently in development or currently owned by somebody else to do something for. And he basically allowed people, like indie filmmakers, like if we want to do like a Shocktober short, he allowed people just to use those stories. Cool. And I thought that was really, really fucking cool.
Yeah, that is really awesome. He does seem like a pretty cool guy.
For sure.
Cool, man. Well, that is where I will wrap up Nerd News this week.
All right. So, like Tyler teased earlier, the Oscars for Oscars 2018, where the nominations were just announced, I believe, early last week. And we're going to obviously go through them, talk about them, give our predictions. So, where do you want to start, Tyler? Because you're usually the one that does the list. If you want me to do it this year, that's cool, but you're usually the one that does the list.
I'll be honest, the only reason I didn't want to do the list is because whenever we get to Best Actor and I have to say the guy's name from Get Out, I'm going to fuck it up so bad. So I was hoping to leave that up to you, but I'd be happy to jump on that grenade if I need to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're going to butcher it, but you're actually better at that than I am. Like, I don't even know if I would even try. Because it would be so bad.
It's all about confidence. You just play it off like you did it right.
For sure. I have zero confidence, as we know.
So I think that we'll start with, I don't want to say any category is lesser than another category, because obviously all the people nominated for these awards put in hard work. But we'll start with the categories that are more technical and work our way up to ending with the best picture. So
should we mention that we're going to skip a few?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few that Pat and I don't really have much to say about and wouldn't really be able to predict very well. Specifically, we're not going to talk about any of the music because there's only one song that either of us knows, like for best original song. We will talk about original score and production design, but we'll skip like sound editing, sound mixing. For the foreign language movies we haven't seen, the documentaries we haven't seen this year, so there will be a few categories we skip. So if you were wanting us to talk about a certain category and you don't hear it, just assume that it's because we have no opinions there or haven't seen the films. So
cool.
With that being said, we'll start with visual effects. So Blade Runner 2049, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Kong Skull Island, Star Wars The Last Jedi, and War for the Planet of the Apes are the nominees for Best Visual Effects.
So the one that jumps out to me is like it seems like.
Do you even have to say it? You have to put it
it seems like one of these things is not like the other, and that is Kong Skull Island. Like, come on. You just threw that one in there to fill out the category, right? There's no fucking way that Kong Skull Island wins this. Now, granted, it did have some pretty cool visual effects. I mean, Kong, you have to create that visually, like with special effects. So, I mean, there had to be some visual effects in that movie, obviously. So, I get it. But, like, come on. You're not going to give it over Blade Runner. You're not going to give it over War for the Planet of the Apes, The Last Jedi. Like, this is a pretty stacked category. Kong Skull Island, I'd be surprised if it got one goddamn vote.
I mean, I'll be honest. I didn't expect you to shit on Kong Skull Island. I thought that you weren't going to be able to resist sucking the dick of War of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, I mean, we're going to get to that. It was just the first thing that I wanted to mention. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the Academy to redeem themselves, but I'm still super, super bitter that Dawn didn't win this category a few years ago. I'm still bitter about it.
I think that the salt in the wound here is that the nominees were released by the Academy president and Andy Serkis, and that's the closest he'll ever get to being on the stage at the Academy Awards.
You better fucking watch your mouth. He could be nominated for Avengers.
Oh, yeah.
You never know.
No, I doubt it. But anyways, I'm assuming you think or want War of the Planet of the Apes to win.
I want War for the Planet of the Apes to win, but I actually don't think they will. I think it's going to be Blade Runner for sure.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I don't have much of an opinion here, to be honest. Like, I think all of the movies besides Kong Skull Island had great visual effects, so I don't think I'm going to be disappointed if any of them win, but Blade Runner 2049 is very, very pretty and was also a pretty well-received movie that wasn't nominated for a lot, so I think that this will be their Oscar they get.
For sure.
All right. Do you want to do costume design?
I mean, is it just... let me see. Let me roll up.
It's Beauty and the Beast, Darkest Hour, Phantom Thread, The Shape of Water, and Victoria and Abdul.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. I must have skipped it when I was scrolling up because I can't find it now. But
if I had a nickel for every time you've told me to let's just go ahead and do it, then I'd be a rich man.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it's always, this category is always hard because, I mean, Beauty and the Beast wasn't the greatest movie, but the costumes were pretty cool. But then you have Darkest Hour, that is kind of a darling, award season darling right now. And it is it's a historical movie. And so they had to obviously do that for that particular movie. So I would say probably Darkest Hour.
So I'm going to put myself in the mind of an Academy voter, and I think that most people in the Academy, as much as I hate to say it, probably don't give a shit about costume design. I've heard I've seen certain anonymous quotes from voters in the Academy and they're pretty terrible people sometimes. So while I think that other movies deserve the Oscar for costume design, I think Phantom Thread to get it because the casual voter was probably like, I don't know, that movie's about fucking dressmaking and shit, so
Yeah.
we'll give them the one for costume design. So that's my guess.
I did finally find the category, and I just realized that Beauty and the Beast and Darkest Hour are by the same person.
Oh, really?
The same person is
Oh,
nominated?
yeah, sure enough.
So I guess she gets 2 shots. That doesn't seem fair, but okay, whatever.
All right. So from there, we'll go to production design. So production design, the nominees are Beauty and the Beast, Blade Runner 2049, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, and The Shape of Water.
Who I want to win. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, I liked Beauty and the Beast, and I would like that to win something, but I think that it'd be Blade Runner 2049 again.
Yeah, so there's 3 for me that I wouldn't mind winning, and that is Blade Runner, Dunkirk, and The Shape of Water. I really am kind of rooting for The Shape of Water, but like we kind of said earlier with the visual effects, I think Blade Runner is going to probably clean up with these technical awards, the ones that they're nominated for. So I think this is their category to lose, but I'm really kind of hoping The Shape of Water gets it because we talked a little bit about that when we discussed the movie. It's such a beautiful movie. Like, throw out the last 20 minutes of the story because it gets a little fucking crazy, but it's a beautiful fucking movie to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree. So from there, we'll go to film editing. So the film editing nominees are Baby Driver, Dunkirk, I, Tonya, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
So this is another tough one because I'd love to see Baby Driver get it because with the car chases, they look amazing, especially with kind of syncing it up. And I guess this is a little bit more sound editing, but syncing it up with the songs is really, really cool. But I kind of have a dark horse. I don't think that it's going to win, but I thought the way that they cut the interviews with I, Tonya and the actual, it's all acting, but the actual story itself I thought was pretty cool. So I thought that was an interesting way to do that movie. So that would be kind of my dark horse, but I think that 3 Billboards is probably going to clean up most of the categories that it's nominated for. So I would say that that's probably the favorite.
You took the words right out of my mouth with I, Tonya, the interviewing. And the way they cut that into the story, I thought was really great. So I'm going to stick with that and also say that'd be the winner.
Okay, cool. I kind of did a bit of a cop-out. I named a couple of them, so it's hard for me to be wrong. So that was a bit of a cop-out on my part.
So from there, we'll go to the cinematography. And those nominees are Blade Runner, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Mudbound, and The Shape of Water.
So pretty much the exact same thing I said in the last category with Blade Runner and The Shape of Water and Dunkirk. I want one of the 3 to win. I think it's going to be Blade Runner, but again, The Shape of Water is a beautiful fucking movie to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a category like visual effect could go one of a couple ways, but I don't see how Blade Runner doesn't get cinematography. That was the biggest selling point of that movie, to be honest, like with the promotional material and just kind of the aura of that film. So I think that it'd get cinematography for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right. Original screenplay. The Big Sick, Get Out, Lady Bird, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
So I really love 3 Billboards, and I think that he is an amazing writer. I've liked pretty much every movie that he has done, but this is a tough category. I'm rooting for The Big Sick. I love Camille. He's amazing. He's an awesome Twitter follow. If you haven't already, definitely check that out as well.
That's as much praise as getting an Oscar too. Pat saying you're a good Twitter follow. So
yeah. So he's already won. So no, obviously that's the one that I want to win, and I believe that's the only one that The Big Sick has been nominated for. So I'm not going to do a cop out, even though this is a big category, and I think anybody would be deserving of it. I'm going to say The Big Sick. I'm not going to do a cop out.
I think that Get Out is the winner here, and this would be the only Oscar that movie gets.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's my guess. Let's see. So we'll move on to adapted screenplay. We have Call Me by Your Name, The Disaster Artist, Logan, Molly's Game, and Mudbound.
Okay, so I have not seen Call Me by Your Name, but it's nominated for a few Oscars, and it is definitely a movie that a lot of people are really, really clamoring for. And I don't believe it won anything at the Golden Globes, and it shouldn't matter. It should matter, but we've talked about this before. There are certain movies, depending on what category they're nominated for, they kind of get like token Oscars. Not that they didn't deserve it, but it's like, oh, well, you're nominated for 4 categories. 3 of them, there's no chance you're going to win, so we're going to give you the 4th one. And I think this is that category for Call Me by Your Name. I don't think they're going to win anything else, and I think they're going to give it to them for this particular category.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that will win an adapted screenplay. I don't know about The Disaster Artist. I mean, it obviously did very well at the Golden Globes and was nominated in quite a few categories. And I might be wrong, but I think that this is the only category it's nominated in for the Oscars, probably mostly because of the backlash that kind of came out around James Franco. And I don't know if that backlash should be enough to keep The Disaster Artist from winning, or if people will give it to them because it's the only thing they're nominated for. And it was actually, I mean, it's a pretty good movie. So I think that it'd be Call Me by Your Name, but I'm curious to see if The Disaster Artist gets anything.
Yeah, and I don't think that all the controversy should matter, but it does matter because the Oscars is a show too. And I don't think that they really want all of that controversy surrounding the show because they've really struggled with the ratings in the past. So I know that shouldn't be something that we have to consider, but with the Oscars, I think it's shown in the history that it does matter. Those types of things do matter.
Correct. So from there, we'll go to animated feature, and we have The Boss Baby, The Breadwinner, Coco, Ferdinand, and Loving Vincent.
Okay, so this is obviously a big category for us if you've been with the podcast for a while. We love animated movies. And so there's kind of like with Kong Skull Island, there's one that obviously just screams at you that shouldn't be nominated, and that, of course, is The Boss Baby. Everybody kind of lost their shit on the interwebs when it was nominated, and honestly, I had not seen it yet. And it was nominated for a Golden Globe for the same category as well. And when I saw that, I kind of chuckled, but I was like, well, maybe I underestimated this movie. And so the day it got nominated, I got home from work and I was like, okay, there's like 4 or 5 movies that I haven't watched yet that I need to watch. And so I decided to watch The Boss Baby, and it is just as bad as I thought it was going to be when I saw the trailer. Like, it is just the lowest common denominator, kiddie trash. Like, it's garbage. Do not watch this movie. It's really, really stupid. Like, we talk about a lot when we review our animated movies that we are looking for movies that, yes, it is a genre that is geared towards kids, but movies, especially the Pixar movies recently, have done just a phenomenal job of making these movies that are for kids, but have adult content in them as well. And that is not at all what Boss Baby is. It's just lowest common denominator kiddie trash. And it's not even that good. Like, the animation is really, like, I'm not crazy about the style, but it's done really well. So I will give them that. But yeah, it's just a garbage story. It has nothing for adults. It really barely has anything for kids.
Yeah, so I don't have much to say here because unlike most other years, I've only seen one nominee in this category. But
really,
like, you'd have to show me something very convincing to make me think that this movie doesn't deserve it. It was in my top 5 for 2017, so obviously, Like Coco is going to win, and it deserves to win, in my opinion. And that's a bold statement considering I have not seen the other nominees, but that's my opinion.
So I saw a tweet after they announced the nominations and mostly the Boss Baby being nominated, and somebody said it seems like the Oscars just picks the Pixar movie that was made, and then they just Google animated movies 2017 to fill out the rest of the and that I don't think is necessarily completely true, which I know that, I mean, they're doing it for comedy and I get that, but Loving Vincent was actually a pretty cool movie. The story really lets that movie down. For those that don't know, it's not really a biopic, but it's kind of discussing the year after Vincent van Gogh died. And they actually do it in a style, like they actually painted. It's not done by like computers. Like they literally painted this movie in the style of him, like his style, his artistic style. And they also base a lot of the character designs on some characters in his painting, his most famous paintings. So it was really, really cool to watch. It's just a beautiful movie to look at. But unfortunately, the story itself really let the movie down and the animation down. So yeah, I want to say that Loving Vincent might be a dark horse, but at the same time, the story is really piss poor. So it's going to be Coco for sure. And I don't understand why the Academy hates the Lego movie so much. Like we went on a rant a few years ago when the first Lego movie came out and it didn't get a nomination, and now Lego Batman doesn't get a nomination. And I'll be real honest with you, I would rather have seen the Lego Ninjago movie that neither one of us really liked more than Boss Baby.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't get that, because all of the Lego movies except for Ninjago have been pretty well received. So it's weird to me that none of them have been nominated for Oscars. So that is strange, especially seeing Boss Baby there.
Yeah,
I would have taken Cars 3 over Boss Baby.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think I would have taken Cars 3 over Boss Baby as well, and Lego Ninjago. God, I stuttered for a second there. But I haven't seen Breadwinner, and Ferdinand basically is the same as Boss Baby. I would take Ferdinand over Boss Baby. I think it's a better movie, but it's kind of the same thing where it's the lowest common denominator. Like they definitely shot for the kid audience on that one, but it's done a lot better than Boss Baby did.
Cool. So from there, we'll go on to director. We have Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, Jordan Peele for Get Out, Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird, Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, and Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water.
Yeah, so this is a tough category for me because there are three people in this category that I really, really want to see win. Of course, Guillermo would be my favorite. I'd love to see Christopher Nolan win one because he is not nominated. I don't know if has he ever been nominated?
I don't know. I know it hasn't been enough. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, he does such great work. Interstellar aside, he does great work. And then of course, Jordan Peele. I loved Key and Peele. So I'd love to see Get Out win something because, like Tyler said, I don't think that it's going to win a ton. So it would be kind of cool to see him win, and I think he would give a really cool acceptance speech. But I mean, I'm rooting for Guillermo because I love The Shape of Water. Other than the last 20 minutes, like I said.
Yeah, and this is I really love this list of director nominees.
For sure.
Like it's not only is it diverse, but everybody on this list deserves to be there. And it's, I don't think that I'd be too upset with anybody on this list winning except for maybe Paul Thomas Anderson. And that's just honestly because I haven't seen Phantom Thread. So shame on me. But I think that, Guillermo will win and he deserves to win, not only because Shape of Water is a pretty good movie, the last 20 minutes withstanding, but, at this point, having a 25-year career, I don't want to say it's like a culmination of all that, but in a way it kind of is, kind of like with Martin Scorsese in The Departed when he finally won. So for me, it's Guillermo and it should be too. So
for sure. And like we said earlier, stuff like that shouldn't play a part. Like you should just, is he the best director out of all of these people for this particular movie. Maybe not. Like, I definitely think that if you're taking that, and I haven't seen Phantom Thread either, but if you're taking that, if you're just strictly going by the movie and the directing in the particular movie, I think it's Guillermo or Christopher Nolan. But like I said, or like you said, I think they're going to give it to Guillermo just because he's done such great work for such a long time. Not that Christopher Nolan hasn't, but yeah, I think they give it to him.
Cool. So, supporting actress. Mary J. Blige for Mudbound, Allison Janney for I, Tonya, Leslie Manville for Phantom Thread, Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird, and Octavia Spencer for The Shape of Water.
I think that I did like I, Tonya quite a lot, but I think it's definitely a movie that people forget about. But I think Allison Janney did a phenomenal job. I think she actually, her character, and that is a function of the story, not necessarily the movie itself, but I think her character kind of gets forgotten towards the middle of the movie, which is a shame because she puts on just a phenomenal performance. Now, I haven't seen Mudbound, so I don't know Mary J. Blige character. I don't know if she does a good job. I'm assuming she did because she got nominated for this category. But, and of course, like I said, I haven't seen Phantom Thread either. But I think it's Allison Janney's category to lose.
I agree, and I don't have too much more to add to that. Like, I think that Octavia Spencer and Laurie Metcalf are both also deserving. I thought Laurie Metcalf was amazing in Lady Bird, but I think that it's going to be Allison Janney, and if she does end up winning it, I think it is well deserved as well. So from there, we'll go to supporting actor. We have Willem Dafoe for The Florida Project, Woody Harrelson for Three Billboards, Richard Jenkins for The Shape of Water, Christopher Plummer for All the Money in the World, and Sam Rockwell for Three Billboards.
So I want to pose a question to you, Tyler, and I know we don't get into the allegations very often on this podcast, but, and you may have not even seen this movie, so it might be a terrible question, but do you think Christopher Plummer would have gotten nominated had he not had to step into Kevin Spacey's shoes? Because I feel like this movie's getting a lot of buzz, and I haven't seen it, so I can't talk about how I felt about the movie, but I feel like people are talking about this movie because of that, and not necessarily the movie itself.
Yeah, and I have not seen this either. I want to see it. I really do. A coworker told me it was boring, but I don't know that I trust that judgment. So I do really want to see it. So unfortunately, without having seen it, I can't really weigh in too much. I would hope that that's not the case because I don't think Christopher Plummer should just be rewarded for stepping in and getting paid to do a job, pretty much. So I hope that that's not the case. I hope that he really does deliver a crazy good performance. And maybe it's just because, his getting up there in age a little bit, and who knows how many performances like this he has left in him, as sad as it is to say that. So maybe that's why he's nominated. But either way, I don't think that he's going to win. It'd probably be Sam Rockwell, I'd imagine.
Oh, yeah, I think it's Sam Rockwell all the way. I just thought that that'd be kind of an interesting conversation to have. I think that he's well deserving of this, Sam Rockwell. I think he's amazing in Three Billboards. He's been one of my favorite actors working. Like, I think he does amazing work when the material is there. Like, he does a lot of shit, and he's not very good in that shit. But I think he's one of those actors that is really, really talented, and he rises to the material, but he can also kind of fluctuate as well. Like, I think he goes down with the material as well.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, this is a category where, again, with all of these nominees, I don't think I'd be disappointed with any of them winning. So,
for sure.
So, lead actress, Sally Hawkins for The Shape of Water, Frances McDormand for Three Billboards, Margot Robbie for I, Tonya, Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird, and Meryl Streep for The Post.
So, we're going to get to The Post in a little bit, but it feels weird saying that Meryl Streep should not be nominated, but I was not impressed with her performance. Not that she did a bad performance. She literally could roll out of bed and give a great performance, but I think this is probably one of her most lackluster performances that I've seen in quite a while. I mean, that's still way and above everybody else's performances, but it feels weird that she's in this category.
Yeah, I remember watching that movie, like trying to pinpoint places where she deserved to be nominated. And there's like one scene between her and Alison Brie where they both get pretty emotional. But to me, she doesn't do anything crazy in that movie that kind of catapults her performance, if you will. So I think that unfortunately, I didn't put much thought into this, and I can't think of somebody else who should have been nominated in that place besides her. But I know that if I went back and kind of reviewed the year of 2017 in film, there'd be somebody. So I agree. I agree that she doesn't deserve to be nominated this year for that movie. Again, not that she's bad, but just not Oscar worthy.
She physically can't be bad. Like, I don't think it's possible for her to be bad. It feels, for her standards, her incredibly high standards, it feels like a lackluster performance. For me, it's Sally Hawkins all the way. Like, the way that she conveys emotion by not being able to basically convey any sound whatsoever, I think is amazing. So I think that she's at a disadvantage with her performance, and then she does such a great job with it. So, I think it's her category to lose for sure.
So Frances McDormand has won the Golden Globe, and then she won the SAG Award last week rather. And in her award acceptance at the SAG Awards, she mentioned like, "Hey, I come out of hiding every few years and do a movie, and you guys are so kind to recognize me when I do that. But there are a lot of young upcoming actresses that are very deserving as well." Yada 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 yada. She spewed some bullshit, and for that, I don't know if she'll get the Academy Award, just because she basically said like, give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And how I interpreted that, and I don't know how, like, we talk about like they give it to people for reasons that aren't
because
really,
of the movie.
Yeah, aren't because of the movie. Like, so for like Guillermo, for example, like, oh, he's been a director for 25 years, let's give it to him. And I don't know how that actually factors in, considering it is something that Academy members vote on. I don't know if people do what they please with the votes, and if it's not really genuine of what people voted for. And if that's the case, I could see it going to somebody like Margot Robbie for I, Tonya, because she won a SAG Award as well. But I think it'll probably be Frances McDormand despite all that.
Yeah, and it's, for me, like I said, I think Sally Hawkins had to do more in her performance, but I wouldn't be mad either way.
You know what I noticed with Frances McDormand is, in both of her speeches that she's done so far for winning Best Actress, she's never once thanked her husband, Joel Cohen, which is fine. Like, if you don't want to thank your husband, that's fine. But as much as we kind of question IMDb sometimes, in the IMDb trivia for 3 Billboards, she didn't want to do the movie, and Joel Cohen kind of twisted her arm to do it. And so for her to get all this praise for doing a movie she didn't want to do, don't you think that she'd thank him?
Has he ever thanked her?
I don't know. I'm not saying like,
that's a two-way street, brah.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just saying like, I'm not saying it's like a gender thing either. Like, I'm assuming in most.
It sounds like you did.
Shut the fuck up.
That the woman has to thank the man?
Let me finish. If you go back and you listen to some most Best Actor speeches, I'm sure that they thank their wives in them. And I don't know. Like, I would thank my wife if I won something.
For cooking them dinner, right?
Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm just saying, like, in all seriousness, don't you think that she would thank him?
It seems weird, but they seem like a weird couple. They totally, like, if you saw them walking down the street, you'd be like, there's a couple of weirdos.
Yeah, they definitely have different bedrooms, I'm thinking. So, on that note, we'll go to lead actor. And this is where I'm going to start fucking up names. So we have Timothée Chalamet for Call Me By Your Name, Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, Gary Oldman for The Darkest Hour, Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel, and Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out.
You nailed it, man. It's just the drink. Kaluuya.
Okay. Perfect. Then we're good. So those are the nominees. And I'll be honest, when like these nominees came out, I was a little surprised to see Denzel Washington nominated because I've not heard dick about that movie, and I don't think he's been nominated at any of these other award shows.
I thought he got nominated for the Golden Globe. I don't know about the SAG. I didn't really follow that one.
Yeah, so maybe I'm wrong, but I just didn't hear much about that movie.
Yeah, it didn't do well as far as it looked kind of interesting to me when I saw the trailer, and then I want to say that it's rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, so I didn't give it too much credence. Not to say that you can't have a good performance in a bad movie. We see that all the time, but I don't think he has a shot in hell. I think he may have gotten nominated because he's Denzel Washington.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with Meryl Streep. Like, he just rolls out of bed and gets nominated for whatever he does.
Yeah. So I think it's either Gary Oldman or Daniel Day-Lewis. They've made a lot of press about this being Daniel Day-Lewis's last movie. And, I mean, that remains to be seen. It's hard to take actors seriously because acting is something that you can do into old age. We just talked about Christopher Plummer, so I mean you could literally do it until the day you die, essentially. So
yeah, but
it's hard to believe that he's gonna. What
I said, but speaking of weirdos,
for sure,
he's a super weird dude.
So I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he sticks to it. And I mean, Sean Connery has basically stuck to it. So I mean, people do retire. But I don't see that actually happening. But for the time being, they may just give it to Daniel Day-Lewis because this is his last movie. But he's also won a ton of awards before, so it's not like this is going to be his last shot to win one.
Yeah, I'd like to see Gary Oldman win. I think it's overdue. Like, he's done a lot of great things, and while I was not very complimentary of Darkest Hour last week when I talked about it, and if I'm being honest, I don't think it's Gary Oldman's best performance. He just kind of yells a lot. I'd like to see him win. I thought he's won one. I thought he won for the Sid and Nancy. Maybe he did. For some reason, I didn't think he had because they made such a big deal about it being his first Golden Globe. So maybe he has won an Oscar and just not a Golden Globe. But either way, like, I wouldn't be upset with anybody in this category winning except for maybe Denzel because the movie wasn't good. But I think it'd be Gary Oldman, but I'd be cool with Daniel Day-Lewis getting it too if he's genuinely retiring from acting.
Yeah, he wasn't even nominated. According to Wikipedia, he wasn't even nominated for the Sid and Nancy. I don't know if that's what it was called, but he played Sid Vicious. It was, early in his career. According to Wikipedia, he was only nominated for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which that movie was boring as shit. And then, of course, The Darkest Hour. So I thought for some reason he had won for that. But anyways, I think it's between him and Daniel Day-Lewis, like I said. And I think they're probably Gary Oldman, but I haven't seen Phantom Thread, so I'm not sure.
Cool. So on that note, we'll go to Best Picture.
All right.
There are quite a few nominees this year. They're utilizing the expanded number that they implemented a few years ago. So the nominees are Call Me by Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Okay, so I've only seen, 6? Because I think there's 9 nominated. I have not seen Call Me by Your Name. I have not seen Phantom Thread. And what's the other one? Darkest Hour. Yeah, I haven't seen those 3. But honestly, I don't know if those 3 are even in the running. I mean, obviously they're in the running because they're nominated. But, I mean, I guess out of those 3 that I haven't seen, I think Call Me by Your Name probably has the best shot. But I don't really think that it's going to win. And unfortunately, because I don't like agreeing with you all the time, Tyler, I did not like The Post. Really, I don't know if I necessarily get into those journalistic movies. Like, I just don't really, like, I wasn't a huge fan of Spotlight, and I wasn't really a huge fan. I've seen All the President's Men a couple of times, and I know a lot of people like that movie quite a lot, and I just never really got into that movie either. So I don't know if it's just those types of movies I don't really get into, but I thought The Post was really boring. Like, it was just, I mean, they milked that for all it's worth. Like, I honestly don't think it's that interesting of a story to begin with, and to make a 2-hour movie out of that is stretching it pretty thin. And I'll be honest with you, and I don't do this very often, especially for a movie that I see in the theater. Like, I was on Twitter at one point, like, just scrolling through, because I was bored. I was legitimately bored during this movie.
Yeah, I mean, you can listen to last episode and hear my thoughts on it, but I definitely agree. It was very boring and very disappointing for a Steven Spielberg movie starring Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep.
For sure. And then, of course, I'm rooting for Get Out because it was one of my favorite movies of the year. I think it ended up being 2 or 3. I don't remember exactly where it landed. It was really high. I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. So I'm obviously rooting for it, but I think it's 3 Billboards for sure.
Yeah, I love that Get Out's even nominated. Like, cause that, I mean, it's such a good movie, but it's also, pretty weird. It's pretty out there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At its core, it's a horror movie and like a mind swap movie, and there's all sorts of weird nuances to it. So I love that it's nominated, and it was my number 3 favorite movie of last year. So of course that's the one I'm rooting for, but I agree that it's going to be 3 Billboards. I will say there's been a little bit of a backlash over 3 Billboards the last couple weeks, with just especially Sam Rockwell's character, how he's introduced as a racist who beats up on African Americans, and that's never really rectified. And towards the end of the movie, spoiler alert, he's kind of redeemed, even though he didn't really do much for redemption.
Yeah.
So there has been a little bit of backlash around that aspect of the movie, and I wonder if it will hinder it from winning. But just judging by what we know and what we've seen, I think that it's that movie's award to lose. Of course, last year nobody expected Moonlight to win, so I'm excited to see if there is an upset.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem with the Oscars in general, what you were saying about 3 Billboards. Because there's so much time in between the Golden Globes and like the SAG Awards and the Oscars. Like the Oscars, it doesn't air, I believe, like March 4th or something like that. So we're still in January right now. We still have a whole month before this show comes out. And so there's so much time to criticize these movies. And honestly, one of the reasons I like 3 Billboards so much is it's a complicated movie. There's not really a hero in it. And I think that's what makes his movies so great, is they are complicated. He doesn't have these, like, cut and dry characters in his movies. Yeah, Sam Rockwell's character is not a good dude. Even with his mini redemption at the end, he's still not a good dude. But it's not this black and white kind of cut and dry type of movie. And that's one of the reasons I loved it so much.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I love the movie. It made my top 10 of 2017. So I'm all for it winning, and I'd love to see it win. There's actually a few movies on this list that I wouldn't be upset if they won. I think The Shape of Water definitely has a shot, but at the end of the day, it'll probably be 3 Billboards.
For sure.
All right, man. That is the Oscars for this year. So we'll see how we do in a month.
Yeah. I'm nervous because I think this is going to be a bad year for my predictions.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was more so kind of the same philosophy that we use when we do our Rotten Tomatoes draft now. It's like, who do I want to win?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I feel weird. Like you said with the Rotten Tomatoes, like I don't want to root against certain movies. So it's like, oh, well, when I'm predicting, this is the movie I want to win. So I might as well go ahead and pick it because that's who I'm going to be rooting for anyways when I'm actually watching the show.
Absolutely, man.
All right. So what's a nerd favorite this week?
So this is kind of a weird one, but, and it's going to seem pretty random because it doesn't connect to anything that we've talked about on the podcast, but there was a conspiracy theory that was kind of started this week that I really took to, and I wanted to talk about it. So I'm curious what your favorite pop culture conspiracy theory is. And just in case those of you listening think possibly that there's not many to choose from, I Googled best pop culture conspiracy theories and found a list of 70. So That's crazy. There are a lot out there, so I'm curious which one is your favorite, because it's so out there and crazy, and of course it's not true, or if it's something you actually believe, just kind of what your thought on that is. So mine, as I mentioned, is one that came out this week, and I thought that it was pretty hilarious. It is that Disney's Frozen was titled Frozen. That way when people search Disney and Frozen in the same
I saw something about this.
Yeah, so that would be the result, as opposed to Walt Disney's Frozen Head, because obviously that's another conspiracy theory all in and of itself, is that Walt Disney had himself frozen. So that's why they titled the movie that, so that it would limit that kind of discussion and that talk, because search results would only result in the Frozen movie. And I don't know if it's true, and it's kind of silly, but I think that it's hilarious that, especially if there is any hint to it being true, because I know that the fable that it's based on, I forget what its real name is, but it's nothing. Frozen's not in the word. Like, it's just something that Disney made up, kind of like Tangled with the Rapunzel story. So I think that would be hilarious if that's why they chose that title.
Yeah, that was a good one. I saw a tweet about that earlier in the week, and I thought that was really interesting because I forget about that one. Like, the Disney had his head frozen. Like, that's not something that obviously you think about too often. And so when I saw that tweet, I was like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense. And honestly, some of the shitty stuff that Disney does, like, it's not a good company. I mean, we love it because they've made such great things that we grew up on, but honestly, they are not a good company. And you didn't bring this up in Nerd News, so I'm going to kind of steal your thunder a little bit, but I saw something about how Redbox is suing Disney right now because they make them buy their stuff full price, and they like want Redbox to like charge more for their movies and shit like that. So Disney's not a good company. They're kind of the evil empire, it seems like, with all this shit that goes on. So honestly, with their reputation, it's not something that I would put past them.
Oh, for sure.
All right. So yeah, this is a weird question, a weird nerd favorite, and there's a lot of places to go to with this one, but we've actually, and we didn't line this up. Tyler has no idea what I'm going to bring up, but he talked about Dr. Sleep and The Shining, and there's so many conspiracy theories around The Shining. Sure. If you're interested in this at all, watch Room 237, which is a documentary, and it basically gets people together and they talk about the different conspiracies in that movie. It is not a very good documentary, so don't expect too much there, but to listen to some of these people, and they are absolutely sure that this is what's happening in this movie. And it's so hilarious listening to these weird fucking people. My favorite in the whole movie is this one guy who is absolutely convinced, and this is a thing I didn't know until I saw this documentary, but this is a thing. People are convinced not only did we stage the moon landing, but Stanley Kubrick was the one who staged it. He was the one that directed the moon landing. And the guy in the documentary, Room 237, basically says that this was his apology and that he was admitting to it. And there's a couple of different reasons. I have an article pulled up, so I'm not just reading this off my memory. But basically, Danny wears an Apollo 11 sweater at one point. There's two girls, obviously the twins, and of course, twins Gemini, is a reference to Nash's, what is the Gemini program? And, there is finally, and this is obviously the biggest stretch, the L's in all, when Jack writes his all work and no play, look precisely like the number 1, and so A11, Apollo 11. So that's a thing. Like, honestly, I would suggest watching Room 237 just to listen to this crazy son of a bitch talk about it.
I wonder how people fall down wormholes like that, just where you get so involved with something that is probably not real and so obsessed with it that you become a crazy person. It's just insane to me.
Like, I love the movies that I love, and I've watched stuff over and over again. Like, I literally probably the most obsessed I've gotten with something recently was Stranger Things season 2. And literally there was one, I've seen that show, that season start to finish 5 times.
That's ridiculous, dude.
And I literally, the last go, I was just looking for things that weren't in that year. Like, I watched the entire show and looked for things that could possibly be in there, and I'd never found one. I mean, technically, I've read, like, the IMDb trivia, and there's, like, they used radios that weren't like, I wasn't looking for that shit. Like, I was looking in the arcade and, like, seeing all the games that come out, like, were in the arcade and whether or not they were released by then and stuff like that. So I got pretty obsessed with that. But I can't imagine watching a movie and thinking, this is an apology letter from Stanley Kubrick because he filmed the moon landing. Like, you really have to be unhinged to think about stuff like that.
Oh, for sure.
So I think those people are really entertaining to listen to because obviously you take it with the hugest grain of salt and you just enjoy listening to them because they're fucking insane.
Absolutely, man.
All right, so that is it for episode 174 of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. As always, we'd appreciate if you subscribe, rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use. We're on it. Our website is thenerdpodcast.com. Comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nerd You're Looking For. Check out our Twitch channel. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. They are both at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. Email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. And, of course, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. For Patrick Kuhn.
Tyler Hunt.
We are The Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Later, guys.